really is there. This is something that is resilient in a different way than things before. There are concerns that I'm pretty certain that there's things that we just don't know because we're not being told, because the prevention of mass hysteria, or the worst version where it's all planned. But any way you look at it, the larger ramifications already seem to be happening. People have a concern over police state stuff, higher levels of surveillance, implanting chips, being forced to take vaccinations. Pretty much the whole list of the libertarian prepper conspiracy perspective of things. The real version of it has a real tangible problem, but it's, for some people, going to be very tough to discern the difference between false flag and real problems going on. And, false flag meaning that it's a staged event that seems like a real thing, to make people believe a narrative. And that's a real thing that happens. It's just that also real, unexpected nature taking its course, tsunamis and other things also happen. We live in a world where technology is catching up to all of the wildest dreams of sci-fi since the 30s. And we do have the real world mad scientists that kind of have that vision of the future being for the rich and the powerful and the connected. And that doesn't look good for us. So let's just pretend that none of that stuff is real and is just about preventing an outbreak. And we have reacted in the trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. And we have world leaders who see the opportunity to take this in a direction. First of all, the dollar does have the potential to sustain a pretty long time into crazy spending and crazy printing. So that does, although have a potential to weaken over time and cause a crisis, the real domino effect is the fact that we have not looked at one of these layered on top of the other at the same time. We've dealt with 9/11. We've dealt with the 2008 housing crisis and the too big to fail stuff. We've dealt with tsunamis. We've dealt with everything from the Hong Kong flu to SARS, swine flu, yada, 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 yada. But we haven't had to deal with a slow increase of all of those on top of each other at the same time, while tensions are building to whether we lay blame to somebody for starting the outbreak and whether that is the small thing that is delicate enough to lead to a world war. So all these things are potential, but let's pretend that it's just the economic side and nothing else. People who do not have jobs and cannot get the relief from employment as quick as needed, and deferred payments that aren't really deferred payments, but are just saying you're going to owe us all of it the second this thing is over, these are going to compound to where people are going to lose their homes, families are going to be displaced, and the banks are not going to have the greedy money that they need to pull back in with the fishing pole. It's going to come back with just the bait. It's not going to come back with us, the fishes. That's a real problem. It's the reason that bailing out the banks is supposed to make it to where they forgive something through a long enough period of time that it's deferred and it's just added to the end, and we don't really feel the hurt from it until everything has restored. So businesses that can't afford to be without customers and they can't afford the long scaling back up to supply chain are going to go out of business, and that's going to be a large percentage. Things that are thought of as the non-essentials, going to movie theaters, going shopping for fun, eating extra meals out, a lot of those places aren't going to be there. And a lot of those places are going to be gone at the same time that the homes are gone. Unfortunately, the crashes lead to other crashes. I mean, people that don't have as much money in circulation are not going to have as much money in the stocks. The stock part does actually matter. And a lot of this is about getting payments places quickly and cheaply. So we hear the government's talking about the digital dollar, the digital euro, the digital yuan. I will go into a little bit more of that in a second. The impact is what we really need to focus on. That none of the average person like myself have a whole lot that we can do to combat an outbreak like this other than to try not to get it ourselves and try not to give it to those that we know around us, our loved ones and strangers. We need to put food on the table, and a lot of us are going to be wondering, how on earth can we do that? That turns into, how do you control mass hysteria? Well, the only way to do that is to have instant infrastructure. Hospitals that are ready for this, ventilators that are ready to help the 30% of people that survive after having to be on a ventilator. Whether we have the proper burial sites, whether businesses that are going to fail can immediately be covered, not by giving them the money that they're missing, but by relieving them from the debts that they would immediately have owed. And since we didn't go that route, the real dangers are there. Unfortunately, this drags on for months, whether the health part of it does or not. Do the non-essentials survive the impact of this? And if they do, then it means a period of time of getting back on one's feet before we have movies and restaurants and a lot of things that have been normal in the past. Some are going to be instantly ready. Some of them are going to take weeks. Some of them are not going to make it. So a weaker global economy means that there's ironically a little bit of stability that comes from that, because without oil to be gas to move cars, you don't have transit. Without transit, you don't have import-export. Without import-export, something like this can completely kill off global economies. That is not good for anyone. The impact on the actual dollar, the actual euro, the actual yuan, pounds, everything else, all the different countries and their money, do not fall for the belief that fiat and central banks are the enemy, therefore we need to get away from the enemy, therefore a big crash is good because it pushes us into digital currencies. I'm going to cover that as the last topic. It is actually part of the danger. We need a balance of what goes in and what comes out to the investments, stock markets, digital currencies, all these different things. The impact is that we are now going to be a world that the second that we hit flu season, we're going to wonder whether this is going to happen all over again. We're going to wonder whether the right thing to do is to go ahead and go through this nauseatingly, or nauseously, this really bad thing, whether to prevent it the second time around. Well, once you're a few months into getting back on your feet, for the people that can, and the world is turning somewhat normal again, human nature is going to be exactly the same thing. We're going to be struggling with the exact same situation. We don't want a police state. We don't want those in power to tell us what we have to do. It's all very clear, very obvious that unfortunately we settle into something that seems normal again. Life gets back to normal, and then is it the same threat or a new one or not there at all? We don't know. Somebody does, though. The impact is going to be known well ahead of time, and unfortunately we're not going to be a part of that decision making. What I do know is that nobody who is filthy rich wants their wealth to suddenly be worth nothing. The economic impact impacts them too. If you have $1 billion of something worthless, it's not better than having $1 million of something worthless, or $1 of something worthless, one of something worthless. So there is going to be a desire to reduce the impact on the world as we know it, but also to open up new avenues for how that wealth can be used and spread. So that takes me to the next topic.